The Christian duty. Leviticus 19:17 says, "Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. Thou shalt earnestly rebuke thy neighbor, lest thou shalt bear sin on the account of him." There's many Christians, or so-called, that because they name the name of Christ, they feel that to love someone is to accept them just the way they are. And they leave the way someone lives between them and God because they feel that's judging them. And that kind of releases them from any obligation of warning them to flee from the wrath of God to come. Or others, they might insist that it's not their calling. They claim that they witness by the way they live, actually because deep down they're probably just ashamed to tell them, the gospel. That might not be it. But, of course, these professors would never dare to warn or rebuke a brother in sin, feeling that would be judging. Now, the text that I just read, "Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart," it simply means that if you're more concerned about what your friends think about you than you are for their lives and safety, you hate them in your heart. I know you don't agree with me, but let me give you an illustration. You notice that your neighbor's house is on fire, and you know the Smiths and their children are all sleeping, unaware of the fact that their house is on fire. Now, if you, not wanting to wake Mr. Smith this early in the morning, were to sit down in the front of the yard and watch the house burn down, you would be responsible for the outcome of the Smith's family. And I dare say that if someone found out or knew that you'd watched the Smith's family burn down and you didn't lift a finger to help them or warn them, you would be in a lot of trouble. Now for another scenario. There's millions of people all around you, and they're headed for a lake of fire in hell, and you know someone that can save them. Ezekiel 3:18 says, "When I say unto the wicked, thou shalt surely die, and thou givest him no warning, nor speak to warn the wicked from his wicked way, to save his life, that same wicked man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at your hand. Yet if you warn the wicked, and he turn not from his wickedness, nor from his wicked way, he shall die in his iniquity, but thou hast delivered thy soul." See, many seek the approval of men rather than the approval of God. How many men and women are there that when they know someone is doing something that would bring damnation to their soul, they'll smile sheepishly and say a silent prayer like, "Oh God, please forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." Forgive them? Why not rather ask God to forgive you for being willing to watch your friends or neighbors, or in some case even your own loved ones, go to hell forever, all because you couldn't tell them the truth? You're more concerned about the admiration of men than the cause of Christ. Will you now, before it's too late, stand and be the man or woman of God that God wants you to be? Many people are afraid to tell others because they feel this is judging. Now that would be true if you hated the person or you treated them unkindly because you knew they were in sin. That would be judging, and that would be wrong. But if you love somebody, you will warn them in love to save them. Love is not hypocritical. Okay? Meaning, if you're telling someone they should not steal and yet you're guilty of the same, you are a hypocrite. Matthew 7:3-5 says, "And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, Let me pull the mote out of thy eye, and behold, a beam is in your own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast the beam out of your own eye, and then thou shalt see clearly to cast the beam out of the mote out of their brother's eye." See, what Jesus was saying is first cast the sin out of your own life, and when you've gotten the sin out of your life, you'll see clearly to help get the sin out of others. Okay? Basically he's saying, do not preach what you yourself do not live. Or how can the blind lead the blind? Hear me, preachers, or even professed Christians. Your sermons will never have power until you live them. We're plainly told in Scriptures to warn others. Paul tells us in 1 Timothy 5:20, quote, "Them that sin rebuke before all, that others may fear," end quote. And again in Titus 1:13 he says, "This witness is true, wherefore rebuke them sharply, that they may be sound in the faith." Sin is serious. It will drive a man to hell if it's not overcome by the power of the blood of Christ and the new birth. If we could see where sin was sending our loved ones, our neighbors, our friends, we would be pleading with them to forsake their sins and embrace Christ whenever God presented the opportunity. If you were on a life raft and your friends were drowning next to you in shark-infested waters, and you did nothing but read your book and enjoyed your tan, could the people in that water really call you a friend? Charles Finney said, "If you see your neighbor in sin and you pass by and neglect to reprove him, it's just as cruel as if you should see his house on fire and pass by and not warn him of it. Why not? If he is in the house will burn and he will lose his life. If he sins and remains in sin, he will go to hell. Is it not cruel to let him go unwarned to hell? Some seem to consider it not cruel to let a neighbor go on in sin until the wrath of God comes upon him to the uttermost. Their feelings are so tender that they cannot wound him by telling him of their sin and his danger. No doubt, the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. Instead of warning their neighbor of the consequences of sin, they actually encourage him in it. Leviticus 19:17 says, "Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart, but thou shalt in any ways rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him." Charles Finney says, "If you do not reprove your neighbor of their sin, you are chargeable with their death." Here's a quote I took from a book, How to Have Revival by Jesse M. Henley. Quote, "An English clergyman came downstairs to the breakfast table one morning. Evidently he had a sleepless night, and his wife asked him, 'What is wrong with you?' 'Wife, I had a terrible dream last night.' 'What was it?' The husband, who had been not winning souls, said, 'I dreamed that we came before the judgment seat of Christ. And as the master looked at me, he said, "Where are the souls of the servants in your house?" I bowed my head and said, "I don't know, Lord." The master asked, "Where are the souls of the children in your house?" And I bowed my head again and said, "That I don't know where the souls of my children were." Then the Lord said, "Where are the souls of the people in your congregation whom you have preached Sunday after Sunday?" And I had to answer, "Lord, I don't know where they are." Then I saw hell open up, and I fell into hell. And there were the souls of my servants. There were the souls of my children. There were the souls of my congregation, whom I had not faithfully warned. They were all gnashing their teeth and cursing me because I had not faithfully warned them about going there. Then the man dropped dead right in the presence of his wife and went into eternity. Now, that's the end of the little quote from that book, How to Have a Revival by Jesse M. Henley. Now, how about you? Have you faithfully warned those that you love? How about your children? How about your grandchildren, your brothers, your sister? Time is running out. Romans 10:14 says, "How then shall they call upon whom they have not believed? And how shall they believe in him who they have not heard? And how shall they hear without a preacher?" Catherine Booth, the wife of William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, said this, "Oh people say you must be very cautious. You must not push religion down people's throat. What? Should I wait until some unconverted, godless man wants to be saved before I try to save him? Am I to let my unconverted friends and acquaintances go quietly down to damnation and never tell them about their soul until they ask? Quote, 'If you please, I want you to preach to me,' unquote. Is this anything like the spirit of the early Christianity? No. Therefore we must make them look. And if they run away from you in one place, meet them in another. And let them have no peace until they submit to God. This is what Christianity ought to be doing in this land. And there are plenty of Christians around to do it. Why, we might give the world such a time of it that they would get saved in self-defense if we were only aggressive enough and determined that they should have no peace in their sins." End quote.